Charis, the Greek word for grace, unmerited favor, unearned, undeserved, and unstoppable. Romans 5:8 says, but God demonstrates his own love for us in this. While we were still sinners, Christ died for us. I didn't always know this kind of love. When I was 10, I was sexually abused by a family member. This continued for over a year and created a toxic framework for what love really is. Because this happened before I knew that God was my defender, shame quickly became my identity. Drinking and smoking by 13, doing drugs by 15. By age 18, I had been dealing drugs. I had been institutionalized 3 times. I had cut my body all over in an attempt to try and feel something. I had battled anxiety and depression. And I had told so many lies that I believed the worst one, that I was unworthy of love. At 19, exactly 9 years ago today, a truck drove on the wrong side of the road and drove into me from the front. I fell into a coma, and that night they told my parents that I might have brain damage or be paraplegic. But God, I woke up 2.5 weeks later. I spent 3 months in hospital recovering, and that January I got to go to university. Now, you'd think that this is where my story would change and that I'd realized that I was loved and chosen and held, but I didn't want anything to do with what resembled love, because that's what shame does. It convinces you that you are not worth the miracle. And so, for 15 years, I continued to drink. I drank, I blacked out, I drove home, and I woke up every morning hating myself and believing that I was unworthy. But God, on March 28, 2021, I hit rock bottom and I surrendered. I dropped to my knees and I gave up my ego and my pride and my self-sufficiency. I stepped into an Alcoholics Anonymous meeting and I was greeted with love and respect and kindness. I got a sponsor, I started working the steps, and grace met me in my weakness. 2 Corinthians 12:9 says that my grace is sufficient for you. My power is made perfect in weakness. Therefore, I will boast all the more gladly about my weakness so that Christ's power may rest on me. So today, my testimony is I've been sober for more than 4 years. Thank you. I sponsor other women in the program. I am healed. I am whole. And I have a peace that I never knew existed. So this September, I take a leap of faith and I begin studies at Bethel School of Supernatural Ministry in the US. So yeah, grace is God's love in action, unearned, undeserved, and unstoppable. And the Bible is full of people who the world called unworthy, but whom God called his own. The woman in the crowd, bleeding for 12 years, unclean, unworthy. But when she touched Jesus, he turned and he called her daughter. Grace restored her identity. The woman at the well, a foreigner, rejected and filled with shame. But Jesus met her with truth, not judgment. Grace gave her a voice, and she became an evangelist. Saul, a violent persecutor of Christians, proud and convinced he was right. But Jesus met him on the road, and grace renamed him Paul, making him a builder of the church. Last week, I had the blessing of visiting Corinth, the place where Paul arrived on his second journey, and there was so much peace in that space. But I had to wonder, how did Paul forgive himself? How did he walk in the streets and the cities where his name brought fear to people? Like, how heavy was that burden for him to receive forgiveness from God? Ephesians 1:7 says that in him we have redemption, and through his blood, the forgiveness of sins, in accordance with the riches of God's grace. Aphesis, the Greek word for forgiveness, means to release, to pardon, and to cancel debt. Forgiveness is the fruit of grace. And Jesus showed us this on the cross. He said, Father, forgive them. And forgiveness, I have learned, is what love looks like. So we have received both charis and aphesis while we were still sinners. And so we are called to give away what we have freely received, even if it feels undeserved. So I ask you, if grace could rewrite the woman in the crowd, the woman at the well, Paul, and my story, all undeserved and deemed unworthy, then surely it can rewrite the story of your enemy. I don't know your story, and I don't know your pain, but I know that grace is God's love in action, undeserved, unearned, and unstoppable. So as God's children, let's not just receive grace, but we can reflect it. I ask you to offer your tears to the Lord, to wipe you clean of your pain, but also your enemy, so that we can invite the Holy Spirit in to fill us, every broken part, every tear, so that nothing is wasted, and we may be made whole.